I never thought betrayal would sound like the engine of a 1939 Laurelton at 2 in the morning. Rain hammered against my bedroom window like angry fists. Thunder rolled across the Kentucky hills, the kind that shakes you down to your bones. I'd been awake anyway. Grief has a way of keeping you company in the dark hours, when Clover started barking. Not her usual bark. This was low, uncertain.
Wrong.
I pushed myself out of bed, my knees protesting like they always do these days, and shuffled to the window. The barn sat about 50 yards from the house, its shape barely visible through the storm.
But then I saw them. Headlights.
Cutting through the darkness like knives. My heart stopped. Someone was in the barn. Someone was near Caldwell's car. Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. Enjoy the story. I grabbed my robe and pressed my face closer to the glass, my breath fogging it up. The barn doors were wide open, swinging wild in the wind. And then I saw her. Clear as day despite the rain. Sienna.
My daughter-in-law.
Wearing that expensive trench coat she'd bought last month, the one she said came from some boutique in Louisville. She was reversing the Laurelton out of the barn. My husband's car. The car he'd spent 23 years restoring. The car he'd made me promise, on his deathbed, with his last coherent words, would stay in this family until his granddaughter Marigold turned 18. The headlights swept across the yard as Sienna backed up, smooth and practiced, like she'd planned this. Like she'd waited for a night exactly like this one. The rain poured down her windshield, but her hands were steady on that leather steering wheel. Caldwell's steering wheel. She didn't look toward the house. Not even once. I stood there frozen, watching the taillights disappear down our long gravel driveway, listening to the sound of that beautiful engine fade into the storm. The same engine Caldwell had rebuilt piece by piece in that barn. The same car where he taught our son Marcus how to check the oil when Marcus was just 7 years old. My hands were shaking, but not from cold. Something hard settled in my chest right then. Not heartbreak. I'd had enough of that when I buried Caldwell 8 months ago. This was different. This was clarity. The kind that comes when someone you trusted shows you exactly who they really are. I walked back to my bed and sat down on the edge, Clover pressing against my legs. The clock on my nightstand read 2:47 a.m. I didn't call Marcus. I didn't call the police.
Not yet.
Because what Sienna didn't know, what she couldn't possibly know, was that Carver Dean, who owned Dean's Classic Auto 30 miles south of here, was one of Caldwell's oldest friends. They'd gone to high school together, served in Vietnam together, stood up at each other's weddings. And Carver Dean had my phone number on speed dial. I just had to wait. The rain kept falling. Clover finally settled down, and I sat there in the dark, thinking about how betrayal doesn't always come with shouting or broken dishes. Sometimes it comes with a soft smile and designer clothes. Sometimes it drives away in the middle of the night, thinking nobody's watching. But somebody always is. My phone would ring in exactly 1 hour and 17 minutes. When it did, everything would change. When it did, Sienna would learn that some things in this world aren't for sale, no matter how much you want that trip to Paris. What would you do if someone tried to sell your family's soul for a plane ticket? Tell me in the comments, because the way I handled it might surprise you. The Laurelton wasn't just a car. Let me tell you what it really was.
I'm Margareta Rowan.
71 years old this past April. Been living in this house outside Hazard, Kentucky for 46 years. Caldwell, and I bought it when Marcus was still in diapers, back when you could get 20 acres and a farmhouse for what people now pay for a used pickup truck. Caldwell worked at the mine for 32 years. Came home every day covered in coal dust, smelling like earth and sweat and hard work. But 3 evenings a week and every Saturday morning, he'd disappear into that barn. And he'd work on the Laurelton. He found it in 1997 at an estate sale in Lexington. Some old tobacco farmer had died, and his kids were selling everything. The car was in pieces, literally in pieces, scattered across a garage like a puzzle somebody had given up on. Caldwell saw it, and his eyes lit up like Christmas morning. "Margareta," he said to me that night, "I'm going to bring her back to life." It took him 23 years. 23 years of weekends, and saved up money and skin knuckles. 23 years of him coming into the kitchen with grease under his fingernails, grinning like a kid, telling me about some part he'd finally tracked down in Ohio or Tennessee or once, I swear, all the way in Oregon. The Laurelton was a 1939 luxury sedan. Deep blue, almost black in certain light. Chrome that could blind you when the sun hit it right. Leather seats the color of caramel. Caldwell used to say it was the kind of car movie stars drove back when movies were still in black and white. He finished restoring it in March of 2020, right before the world shut down. I remember standing in the barn with him, both of us just staring at it. He had tears in his eyes. "It's for Marigold," he said. "When she turns 18. She needs to know where she comes from. She needs to know what it means to finish something." Marigold is our granddaughter. 7 years old now. Smart as a whip, with Caldwell's green eyes and his stubborn chin. She used to sit in the barn with him while he worked, asking a million questions, handing him tools she couldn't even name yet. Caldwell died last February. Heart attack.
Sudden.
The kind that doesn't give you time to say proper goodbyes. He collapsed in the feed store parking lot on a Tuesday afternoon. Gone before the ambulance even arrived. At his funeral, Marcus held onto Sienna's hand like she was the only thing keeping him standing. Maybe she was. And I thought, at least he has her. At least my son has someone to help him through this. I thought she loved us. That's the thing about trust. Once you give it, you don't see the cracks forming underneath. You don't notice when someone stops asking how you're doing and starts asking what things are worth. But sitting there in my dark bedroom at 3 a.m, watching the rain, I could see it all now. Every conversation, every suggestion, every calculated smile. And I knew exactly when it had started. Sienna came into our lives 4 years ago like sunshine through a window. Marcus met her at some corporate training event in Nashville. He worked in pharmaceutical sales, always traveling, always stressed. Then suddenly, he wasn't stressed anymore. He was calling me twice a week, excited, talking about this woman he'd met. This incredible woman. "Mom, she's different," he kept saying.
She's kind.
"She's smart. She actually listens when I talk." He brought her home for Thanksgiving that year. I remember opening the front door, and there she stood. 28 years old, blonde hair pulled back in a neat ponytail, wearing a cream-colored sweater that probably cost more than my winter coat. She was holding a pie. "Mrs. Rowan," she said, smiling wide. "Marcus has told me so much about you. I hope pumpkin is okay. I made it from scratch." She hugged me. Not one of those stiff, polite hugs. A real one. Caldwell liked her immediately. She asked him about the mine, about growing up in Kentucky, about the barn. She seemed genuinely interested. She laughed at his stories. She offered to help me with dishes. "She's a keeper," Caldwell whispered to me that night as we got ready for bed. They got married 8 months later. Small ceremony at a bed and breakfast near Mammoth Cave. Sienna wore a simple white dress and yellow flowers in her hair. She cried during the vows. Marcus couldn't stop smiling. I gave her my grandmother's pearl earrings as a wedding gift. She put them on right away and said they were the most beautiful things she'd ever owned. For the first 2 years, everything seemed perfect. They'd visit once a month. Sienna would bring expensive wine and fancy cheese from Louisville. She'd compliment my cooking. She'd sit with Marigold and do puzzles. She'd tell me I looked nice even when I knew I looked tired. But there were small things, little moments that didn't quite add up. Like how she'd touch things in our house. The antique clock in the hallway, Caldwell's war medals on the mantel, my mother's china in the cabinet, and ask where we got them. How old they were. If we knew what they were worth. "Just curious," she'd always say with that bright smile. "I love vintage things." Or how she'd talk about her bucket list.
Paris. Rome.
The Amalfi Coast. Places that cost money we didn't have. Places that seemed to matter more to her than anything happening right here in Kentucky. "Someday," she'd say, showing me pictures on her phone. "Someday I'll get there." Marcus would just laugh and kiss her forehead. "We will, babe. When we save enough." But her eyes would get this faraway look. Like saving wasn't fast enough. Like she was doing math in her head, calculating something the rest of us couldn't see. Then there was the way she looked at the Laurelton. Every time they visited, she'd wander out to the barn. She'd walk around the car slowly, running her fingers along the chrome, peering through the windows. Once I caught her sitting in the driver's seat, both hands on the steering wheel, eyes closed. "Just imagining what it was like back then," she said when she noticed me watching. "It's like a time machine, isn't it?" I smiled and nodded, but something felt off. Caldwell noticed it too. One night, about a year before he died, he said to me in bed, "Sienna asks a lot of questions about that car." "She's interested in your work," I said. "Maybe." He was quiet for a minute. "Or maybe she's interested in what it's worth." I told him he was being paranoid. I told him Sienna was family now. I told him to stop worrying. I should have listened to him, because the angel we'd welcomed into our family wasn't an angel at all. She was just patient, waiting for the right moment, waiting for Caldwell to be gone, so there'd be one less person in her way. And that moment came sooner than any of us expected. 3 days before Caldwell died, he updated his will. I didn't know he was doing it. He'd gone into town saying he needed to pick up some supplies at the hardware store. Came back 3 hours later with a manila folder tucked under his arm. "What's that?" I asked. "Peace of mind," he said. That night after dinner, he sat me down at the kitchen table, spread out papers in front of us. His hands were shaking slightly, which wasn't like him. "I need you to listen, Margareta," he said. "And I need you to remember this." The will was straightforward. The house and land went to me. His pension went to me. Most of his savings went to me. A portion was set aside for Marcus, to be distributed however I saw fit. But the Laurelton had its own section, typed out clear as day. The 1939 Laurelton sedan was to be held in trust until Marigold Rowan turned 18 years old. At that time, the car would be transferred to her name directly. Under no circumstances was the vehicle to be sold, traded, or removed from family ownership before that date. If anyone attempted to sell the car before Marigold's 18th birthday, they would be removed from any inheritance considerations entirely. "Why are you doing this?" I asked him. Caldwell looked at me with those serious brown eyes. "Because that car is Marcus's history. It's Marigold's future. And I don't trust that it'll stay in the family unless I put it in writing." "You don't trust Marcus?" "I trust Marcus." He paused. "I don't trust Sienna." The words hung in the air between us. I wanted to argue. I wanted to defend her. But something in Caldwell's expression stopped me. "She's asked me 4 times in the past 6 months what the car's worth," he continued. 4 times. She frames it like she's just curious, but I see it in her eyes, Margareta. She sees dollar signs. She sees that trip to Europe she's always talking about. Maybe you're reading too much into it. Maybe. He gathered up the papers. But if I'm right, this will protect Marigold. And if I'm wrong, it doesn't hurt anybody. He locked the will in our safe that night, gave me the combination written on a slip of paper, made me promise I'd remember where everything was. 2 days later, we went to Sunday dinner at Marcus and Sienna's apartment in Lexington. Sienna made roast chicken. We talked about Marigold's upcoming school play. We watched a movie. Everything seemed normal. But when Caldwell and I were leaving, I saw Sienna and Marcus talking in the kitchen. Her back was to me, but I could see Marcus's face. He looked uncomfortable, stressed. I heard her say, "We could finally do it. Finally take that trip." And Marcus saying, "Sienna, we've talked about this." Her voice got sharper. "It's just sitting there. It's not like anyone drives it." I cleared my throat. They both turned around. Sienna's face transformed instantly into that bright smile. "Safe drive home," she said, coming over to hug us goodbye. On Tuesday, Caldwell collapsed in that parking lot. By Tuesday evening, he was gone. At the funeral, Sienna cried into Marcus's shoulder. She held my hand during the service. She helped organize the reception at our house afterward, making sure everyone had food and coffee. 2 weeks later, she brought it up. We were sitting in my living room. Marcus had taken Marigold outside to see the chickens. Sienna leaned forward, her voice soft and caring. Margareta, I've been thinking. That car in the barn, it's just sitting there. And I know Caldwell spent so much on the restoration. The insurance alone must be costing you money you don't need to spend right now. My throat tightened. It's for Marigold. I know. She touched my knee. But Marigold's only 6. That's 12 years away. What if something happens to it before then? What if the barn floods or there's a fire? Wouldn't it make more sense to sell it now while it's in perfect condition? Put the money in a trust fund for her education. She made it sound so reasonable, so practical. Caldwell wanted her to have the actual car, I said. Sienna sat back, her smile fading just slightly. Of course. I'm just trying to help. I know how hard this must be for you. But her eyes told a different story. And I knew right then that Caldwell had been right. This wasn't over. This was just beginning. The next few months were like watching ice form on a lake. Slow. Almost invisible. Until one day you step on it and realize how thin it's been all along. Sienna started visiting more often. Always with some excuse. Bringing groceries.
Checking on me.
Offering to help with yard work that didn't need doing. But she'd always end up in that barn. Just looking, she'd say when I'd find her there. It's so beautiful. Caldwell did such amazing work. She'd run her hand along the hood like she was petting a cat. She'd peer under the tarp we kept over it. Once I caught her taking pictures with her phone. For Marcus, she said quickly. He loves looking at photos of his dad's projects. Marcus never mentioned wanting photos. Then came the suggestions. Always gentle. Always wrapped in concern. Have you thought about downsizing, Margareta? This house is so big for one person. You know, classic cars are really valuable right now. Investment-wise, it might be smart to liquidate some assets. I was reading about estate planning. Sometimes holding on to things emotionally can be a financial burden. She'd say these things while helping me fold laundry or while we washed dishes together. Like they were just casual thoughts. Like she was just looking out for me. But I could see the calculation behind her eyes. The same look she'd get when she'd talk about Paris. About Italian villas. About all the places she hadn't been yet. Marcus seemed oblivious. Or maybe he didn't want to see it. His father had just died. His daughter was struggling in school. His job was demanding. He was drowning in his own grief and stress. And Sienna was there, smiling, supporting him, telling him everything would be okay. In May, they had a fight. I know because Marigold told me about it later. Mommy was yelling about money, she said while we made cookies together. She said she's tired of waiting. Daddy told her to stop. Stop what, honey? Marigold shrugged. I don't know. But Mommy was crying. She said she felt trapped. Trapped. That word stuck with me. In July, Sienna showed up alone on a Tuesday afternoon. She'd never visited alone before. Marcus doesn't know I'm here, she said, sitting down at my kitchen table without being invited. But we need to talk. Really talk. I poured her iced tea. Waited. I'm worried about Marcus, she started. The stress from losing Caldwell, it's affecting him. Affecting us. He's not sleeping. He's distant. Our marriage is struggling. I'm sorry to hear that. We need a reset. We need to reconnect. She looked at me with wide, earnest eyes. There's this trip to Paris we've been dreaming about for years. It would be a second honeymoon. A chance to heal. I already knew where this was going. The thing is, she continued, we're so close to affording it. We've been saving. But we're just short. And I thought, just temporarily, just a loan against the value.
No.
The word came out harder than I intended. Sienna blinked. I haven't even finished explaining. You want money from selling the car. The answer is no. Her expression shifted. The warmth drained out of it like water from a tub. That car is just sitting there, Margareta. Caldwell isn't here to appreciate it. Marigold won't appreciate it for over a decade. But my marriage, our marriage, is falling apart right now. Then fix your marriage without Caldwell's car. She stood up abruptly. You know what? Maybe Caldwell was wrong. Maybe some things aren't meant to be preserved. Maybe they're meant to be used to help the living instead of honoring the dead. I stood up too. My hands were steady. You should go home, Sienna. She grabbed her purse and headed for the door. But she turned back, and for just a second, I saw something ugly cross her face. We'll see, she said quietly. I didn't understand what she meant. Not then. But on that stormy night in October, when I watched her drive away with the Laurelton at 2 in the morning, I understood perfectly. She'd stopped asking. She'd stopped suggesting. She decided that what she wanted mattered more than what Caldwell had wanted. More than what I wanted.
More than what was right.
And she'd taken it. The storm that night wasn't like regular Kentucky rain. This was the kind that feels personal. Angry. I'd gone to bed around 11, but sleep wouldn't come. It never did anymore, not since Caldwell passed. I'd lay there listening to the house settle, listening to Clover snore at the foot of my bed, listening to my own thoughts loop around and around. Around midnight, the wind picked up, started howling through the trees like something alive and hurting. Thunder cracked so loud it rattled the windows. Rain came down in sheets, the kind you can't see through even if you tried. Clover lifted her head around 1:30, ears perked. She's a border collie mix, 12 years old, and she'd never given me a false alarm in her life. When she started that low growl, I knew something was wrong. I got up, pulled my robe tight. The house was dark except for the night light in the hallway. My knees ached as I shuffled toward the window that faced the barn. That's when I heard it. An engine. Not just any engine. The Laurelton's engine. I knew that sound like I knew my own heartbeat. Caldwell used to start it up every Sunday morning, let it run for 20 minutes to keep everything working smooth. That deep, throaty rumble. That particular rhythm. My stomach dropped. I pressed my face to the window, my breath fogging the glass. The barn doors were wide open, swinging wild in the wind. Light spilled out from inside. And then I saw the headlights cut through the darkness. The Laurelton was moving, backing out slow and careful, windshield wipers going full speed. I could see the silhouette behind the wheel. Could see that blonde hair. That expensive trench coat. Sienna. My daughter-in-law was stealing my husband's car in the middle of a thunderstorm. Time seemed to stop and speed up all at once. I watched her navigate the turn, watched her straighten the wheel, watched those red taillights start moving down our long gravel driveway. She drove with both hands steady.
No hesitation.
Like she'd practiced this. Lightning flashed, and for one brief second, I saw her face through the driver's window. Jaw set, eyes forward, determined. She didn't look back at the house. Not even once. The sound of the engine faded into the storm. The taillights disappeared around the bend in the trees. And I stood there in my dark bedroom, 71 years old, watching my family's legacy drive away with someone who'd promised to love and protect it. I should have called the police right then. Should have called Marcus. Should have done something. But I didn't. Because I knew Carver Dean. I knew his dealership was the only place within 100 miles that specialized in classic cars. I knew Sienna had no idea about Caldwell and Carver's friendship. And I knew that if she tried to sell that car, Carver would call me before the ink dried on any paperwork. So I walked back to my bed, sat down on the edge. Clover pushed her head against my leg, sensing something was wrong. "It's okay, girl," I whispered. Let her think she won. The clock read 2:47 a.m. I didn't try to sleep. I just waited, listened to the rain, thought about trust and betrayal, and how sometimes they wear the same face for years before you see the difference. Around 3:15, my phone lit up. Text message from Marcus. "Mom, you awake? Sienna's not home. Getting worried." I stared at that message for a long time. My son,
My boy.
who had no idea his wife was driving his father's car through a storm to sell it for vacation money. I texted back, "I'm sure she's fine. Maybe couldn't sleep and went for a drive." 3 dots appeared. Disappeared.
Appeared again.
"Yeah, maybe. Love you, Mom." "Love you too, baby." I set the phone down and looked at the clock. If Sienna was going to Dean's Classic Auto, it would take her about 40 minutes in this weather. Another 20 minutes to fill out paperwork, assuming she had forged documents ready. Another 40 minutes for Carver to realize something was wrong and call me. 2 hours. Maybe less. The rain kept coming down. Thunder rolled across the hills. And I sat there in the dark, thinking about how Caldwell had known. How he'd seen through her years ago. How he'd protected Marigold's inheritance because he understood that some people look at family heirlooms and see memories, while others just see price tags. This is where everything changed. If you're still here, hit that like button. It tells me you want justice to speak louder than lies. At 4:04 a.m., my phone rang. I let it ring twice before I answered. Wanted my voice to sound sleepy. Surprised. Hello? Margareta? Carver Dean's voice was tight.
Angry.
You need to tell me what the hell is going on.
Carver.
It's 4 a.m. I know what time it is. I've got a woman in my showroom right now trying to sell me Caldwell's Laurelton. Says her name is Margareta Rowan. Says the car belongs to her, and she's got the title to prove it. I closed my eyes. Felt that cold rage settle deeper in my chest. What does she look like, this woman?
Blonde.
Late 20s. Wearing clothes that cost more than my truck. And Margareta, I'm looking at this title right now. It's got your signature on it. Transfer of ownership dated 3 days ago. That's not my signature. Silence on the other end. Then, you saying she forged it? I'm saying my daughter-in-law just stole my late husband's car and forged documents to sell it. And Carver, I need you to keep her there. Already planning on it. I heard papers rustling. She's asking $35,000 for it. Says she needs the money by tomorrow because she's got plane tickets to Paris. She's sitting out there right now looking at brochures of my other cars, thinking this is done. $35,000. For a car Caldwell had poured his heart into for 23 years. For a car that was supposed to go to Marigold. For a piece of our family's soul. Can you stall her for an hour? I asked. I can stall her for however long you need. I've got questions about the engine I want to inspect. I've got paperwork that needs verifying. Hell, I'll check every serial number on this vehicle, if that's what it takes. 1 hour. I'm calling the police now. Margareta? Carver's voice softened. Caldwell was my brother. Not by blood, but by everything that matters. I'm not letting anyone steal from him, even if he's gone. I hung up and immediately dialed 911. Explained the situation to a dispatcher who sounded too young to be working a night shift. She took down the information, said she'd send a unit to Dean's Classic Auto within 30 minutes. Then I called Marcus. It rang 4 times. When he answered, his voice was groggy.
Mom?
What's wrong? Where's Sienna? I don't. She went out a few hours ago. Said she couldn't sleep. Why? Marcus, I need you to meet me at Dean's Classic Auto in Gainsborough. Right now.
What?
Mom, it's 4 a.m. Your wife stole the Laurelton. She's trying to sell it. Silence. Long and terrible. That's not, she wouldn't. Marcus. My voice came out harder than I intended. I watched her take it from the barn at 2:47 this morning. She forged my signature on a title transfer. Carver Dean just called me because she's in a showroom right now trying to sell your father's car for $35,000. I heard him breathing on the other end. Heard something that sounded like a sob catching in his throat. I'll be there in 40 minutes, he said and hung up. I got dressed quickly.
Jeans.
Sweater. My rain jacket. Grabbed Caldwell's will from the safe, along with the legitimate title that had my real signature. Grabbed my purse and car keys. Clover watched me from the bed, head tilted. Stay here, girl. Guard the house. The drive to Gainsborough felt like the longest 45 minutes of my life. Rain still coming down steady. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tight my knuckles went white. I kept thinking about Sienna sitting in that showroom. Thinking she'd gotten away with it. Thinking she was about to fund her dream vacation with stolen family history. I thought about all those dinners we'd shared. All those holidays. The way she'd hugged me at Caldwell's funeral. The way she'd called me Mom and brought me flowers on Mother's Day. Had any of it been real? Or had she been calculating from the very beginning, waiting for Caldwell to die so she could cash in? Dean's classic auto sat on the edge of town, a big metal building with cars parked out front even at this hour. I pulled in and saw the Laurelton sitting under the showroom lights, gleaming like it always did. Perfect and beautiful and wrong in this place. Carver met me at the door. He was a big man, 73 years old, with a gray beard and hands that had worked on more engines than most people would ever see. "She's in my office," he said quietly. "Still thinks I'm processing the sale. Police should be here any minute." Through the glass window of his office, I could see her, Sienna, scrolling on her phone, smiling at something on the screen. "Margareta," Carver said, putting a hand on my shoulder. "You sure you want to do this?" I looked at him, at this man who'd been at my wedding, who'd held my son when Marcus was baptized, who'd stood beside Caldwell's grave and cried like I'd never seen him cry. "She tried to steal from my granddaughter," I said. "I'm sure." The police arrived at 4:52 a.m. 2 officers, one older with gray hair, one younger who looked fresh out of training. Carver met them outside, explained the situation while I waited by the Laurelton. I ran my hand along the hood. Could almost feel Caldwell's presence there. Could almost hear him saying, "I told you so." The older officer came over to me. "Mrs. Rowan? I'm Officer Patterson. We're going to need to see your documentation." I handed him the will, the real title, my driver's license. He studied them carefully, comparing signatures, nodded slowly. "And the woman inside has a different title?"
"Forged," I said.
"My signature looks nothing like whatever she's got." "All right. We'll need to bring her out and ask some questions. Is that going to be a problem for you?" "No problem at all." The younger officer went inside. Through the window, I watched him talk to Carver, then approach the office. Saw Sienna look up, confused at first, then alarmed. She came out with both officers flanking her. When she saw me standing there, her face went through about 6 different expressions in 2 seconds.
Shock.
Anger.
Fear.
And finally, that calculating look I'd seen so many times before. "Margareta," she said, voice shaking. "Thank God you're here. There's been a terrible misunderstanding." "Has there?" "I was trying to help. You've been so stressed about money, about maintaining the property, and I thought if I could sell the car and surprise you. You thought you'd sell my husband's car without asking me. At 4 in the morning. Using forged documents." Officer Patterson held up the 2 titles side by side. "Mrs. Sienna Rowan, these signatures don't match. Can you explain that?" Sienna's face flushed. Margareta signed it. She must not remember. She's been forgetful lately." "I'm 71, not senile," I said coldly. "And I've never been more clear-headed in my life." "Ma'am," the younger officer said to Sienna, "we're going to need you to come with us to answer some questions about document forgery and attempted theft." That's when Sienna's mask finally cracked completely. "This is ridiculous." Her voice rose, sharp and ugly. "That car has been sitting in a barn for months. Nobody uses it. Nobody cares about it except to keep it locked away like some museum piece. I have plane tickets. We have plans. Our marriage needs this trip." "Your marriage," I said quietly, "needed honesty, not theft." Marcus's truck pulled into the parking lot. I watched my son get out, still in his pajama pants and a jacket, his face gray in the fluorescent lights. He looked at Sienna, at the police, at the Laurelton, at me. "Marcus." Sienna rushed toward him, but Officer Patterson held out a hand. "Sir, are you Marcus Rowan?" "Yes." His voice cracked. "That's my wife." "What's happening?" "Your wife attempted to sell a vehicle that doesn't belong to her using forged documents. We're taking her in for questioning." Marcus looked at Sienna, really looked at her, and I saw the moment everything fell into place for him. All those suggestions to sell, all those comments about the car, all those fights about money and Paris and feeling trapped. "You took Dad's car," he said, like he couldn't quite believe it. "You actually stole Dad's car. For us." Sienna's voice was desperate now. "For our marriage. For our future. Your mother doesn't understand. She's stuck in the past, holding on to things that don't matter anymore. That car was for Marigold, Marcus said. Each word came out like broken glass. Dad's will specifically said it was for Marigold. Marigold is 7. She won't care about this car for another decade. But we need help now. The officers began walking Sienna toward their patrol car. She was crying, mascara running down her face, that expensive trench coat soaked with rain. Marcus, please. Tell them this is a misunderstanding. Tell them I was trying to help. But Marcus just stood there, watching his wife get put into the back of a police car. He looked 10 years older than he had at dinner 3 nights ago. When the patrol car drove away, red and blue lights fading into the rainy morning, Marcus finally turned to me. I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry. I should have seen it. Dad tried to tell me and I didn't listen. I walked over and hugged my son. He was taller than me now, had been since he was 16, but in that moment he felt small. Broken. You loved her, I said simply. That's not something to apologize for. Carver brought us coffee in his office. We sat there as the sun started to come up, gray and weak through the rain clouds. He'd already called his insurance company, started the paperwork to document everything. What happens now? Marcus asked. I pulled out the will again, pointed to the section about the Laurelton. Now we make sure your father's wishes are protected, and we make sure Sienna never gets another chance to hurt this family. The next 3 weeks were a nightmare wrapped in paperwork and lawyers and police statements. Sienna was charged with attempted theft and document forgery. She made bail after 2 days, but the damage was done. The story had spread through our small community like wildfire. Everyone knew what she'd tried to do. She tried calling me 6 times that first week. I didn't answer. She left voicemails, her voice alternating between anger and tears. This is cruel, Margareta. I made a mistake. You're destroying my life over one mistake. You don't understand what it's like being married to someone who won't let go of the past. I was trying to save my marriage, and you've ruined everything. I deleted every message without listening all the way through. Then she tried a different approach. Showed up at my house on a Tuesday afternoon when she knew I'd be home alone. I watched through the window as she got out of her car, looking thin and tired, her hair not as perfect as it used to be. She knocked. I didn't answer. Margareta, I know you're in there. Please. We need to talk. Woman to woman. I stood on the other side of the door, Clover growling softly beside me. I know I messed up. I know I handled this wrong. But that car, it's not just about the car, you have to understand. I felt invisible. I felt like I'd never matter as much as Caldwell's memory. Like I was just expected to smile and nod and accept that our life would always come second to the past. Through the window, I could see tears running down her face. And for just a second, I almost felt bad for her. Almost. Then I remembered her sitting in Carver's office, scrolling through her phone, smiling. I remembered her driving away in the middle of the night. I remembered $35,000 and Paris, and how she'd try to sell my granddaughter's inheritance for a vacation. Please, she called out. Just talk to me. We can fix this. I'll apologize to everyone. I'll make it right. But some things can't be fixed with apologies. She finally left after 20 minutes. I watched her drive away, and I felt nothing. Not anger. Not pity. Just a cold certainty that I'd been right to trust Caldwell's instincts. Marcus filed for divorce 3 days later. He came over to tell me in person, brought Marigold with him. My granddaughter ran to hug me, oblivious to the adult disaster happening around her. Mommy and Daddy are taking a break, she said cheerfully. I get to stay with Daddy more now. Marcus looked exhausted. He'd lost weight, had dark circles under his eyes. I met with my lawyer this morning, he told me while Marigold played with Clover in the yard. Filed papers. Requested full custody of Marigold. I'm using the criminal charges as evidence of poor judgment. How are you holding up? He shook his head. I keep thinking about all the times Dad tried to warn me. All the little things I ignored because I thought he was just being overprotective of the car. But he wasn't protecting the car, Mom. He was protecting us. He loved you very much. I know. Marcus's voice broke. And I'm sorry I didn't listen. The legal process took months. Sienna fought the divorce at first, then seemed to give up when she realized Marcus wasn't going to change his mind. She agreed to supervised visitation with Marigold. Agreed to stay away from me and the property. But I had one more thing to do. I called my lawyer and updated my own will. The house, the land, the savings, it all still went to Marcus and Marigold. But I added a new section. If Sienna Rowan ever attempted to contact any member of the Rowan family after the divorce was finalized, she would forfeit any and all claims to any inheritance, property, or assets. If she ever came within 100 feet of the Laurelton, she would face immediate legal action. My lawyer looked at me over his reading glasses. This is pretty ironclad, Margareta. You sure you want it this harsh? I'm sure. What if she changes? What if years from now she wants to reconcile? I thought about Caldwell working in that barn for 23 years. Thought about him on his deathbed, making me promise to protect the car for Marigold. Thought about trust and betrayal and how sometimes people show you exactly who they are if you're willing to look. Some people don't change, I said. They just get better at hiding who they've been all along. The divorce was finalized in March. Sienna moved to Louisville. Blocked Marcus on social media. Cut off all contact except for the court-mandated supervised visits with Marigold, which she attended maybe half the time. She got what she wanted in the end.
She moved on.
Found someone new, according to Marcus. Someone who could afford to take her to Paris. But she left behind wreckage. A broken marriage. A confused little girl who didn't understand why mommy didn't want to see her anymore. And a family who'd learned the hard way that not everyone who smiles at you loves you. Marcus moved back into his childhood bedroom temporarily, him and Marigold both. Said it was just until he found a place of his own, but I secretly hoped they'd stay forever. On Sunday mornings, Marcus started going out to the barn. Started the Laurelton up, just like Caldwell used to do. Let it run for 20 minutes to keep everything working smooth. And sometimes Marigold would go with him, sitting in the passenger seat, asking questions about Grandpa and the car, and what it was like when her daddy was little. The Laurelton sat in that barn waiting. Protected. Safe. Exactly where it was supposed to be. 3 years have passed since that stormy night. Marigold is 10 now. Smart and funny and stubborn in the best possible way. She started asking more questions about the car, about why it's so special, about why we keep it locked up instead of driving it around. Last Saturday, Marcus and I took her out to the barn. It was a clear autumn day, the kind where the sky is so blue it almost hurts to look at. We pulled off the tarp together, all three of us, and the Laurelton gleamed in the afternoon light. Grandpa built this? Marigold asked, running her small hand along the chrome bumper. He restored it, I corrected.
Piece by piece.
For 23 years. That's longer than Daddy's been alive. Almost, Marcus said, smiling. He started when I was 7. Your age, actually. Marigold walked around the car slowly, taking it all in. The deep blue paint. The leather seats. The way the sun caught the chrome and threw light across the barn walls. Why'd he want me to have it? She asked. I knelt down beside her, my knees protesting but my heart full. Because he wanted you to know what it means to finish something.
To work hard for something.
To build something that lasts. Did he know I'd love it? He knew you'd understand it. When you're ready. She looked at me with those green eyes, Caldwell's eyes, and nodded seriously. 8 more years. 8 more years, I confirmed. And then it's yours. Marcus started the engine. That beautiful, familiar rumble filled the barn. Marigold's eyes went wide. Can I sit in it? You can sit in the driver's seat, I said. I helped her climb in while the engine idled. She gripped the steering wheel with both hands, her feet nowhere near reaching the pedals. But she sat there with this look of pure joy on her face, and for a moment I could see Caldwell. Could see him sitting right there, grinning, telling her about carburetors and spark plugs and the way things used to be made. When I'm 18, Marigold said, I'm going to drive this every day. Every day? Marcus asked, laughing. Every single day. And I'm going to tell everyone that my grandpa made it for me. I felt tears prick my eyes. The good kind. The kind that come from seeing your family's story continue in the exact way it was meant to. We never talk about Sienna around Marigold unless she brings it up, which isn't often anymore. She sees her mother twice a month, supervised visits at a facility in Lexington. Sienna sends birthday cards and Christmas presents, but never asks about the car. Never asks about our family stories or Caldwell's memory. She got her trip to Paris eventually. Posted pictures on social media. Marcus showed me once, just so I'd know. She looked happy in those photos. Smiling in front of the Eiffel Tower with some man I didn't recognize. Good for her, I thought. But she'll never understand what she gave up. She'll never know what it feels like to be part of something bigger than yourself. Something that lasts. The Laurelton sits in the barn still, waiting patiently for 8 more years. Marcus maintains it just like Caldwell did. Every Sunday morning, without fail. Sometimes I go out and sit with him while he works, telling him stories about his father that he's heard 100 times, but never gets tired of hearing. And in 8 years, when Marigold turns 18, we'll pull that car out into the sunshine and hand her the keys. And she'll understand that some things in this world aren't for sale. That family isn't measured in dollars. That legacy is built slowly, piece by piece, with love and time and promises kept. Sienna wanted Paris. She got it, but we got something better. We got to keep our family's soul intact. We got to honor a good man's wishes. We got to teach a young girl that betrayal might get you what you want in the moment, but integrity gives you something that lasts forever. Caldwell knew what he was doing when he wrote that will. He knew exactly what he was protecting. Not just a car. Not just metal and chrome and leather seats. He was protecting the idea that some things matter more than money. More than trips to Europe. More than what other people think you should do with your inheritance. He was protecting love. Real, lasting, built-to-last love. And in the end, that's worth more than $35,000 and a plane ticket to Paris could ever buy. If you believe family legacy should never be for sale, share the story. It helps more people hear it and keeps justice alive. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next story. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Your words might inspire someone else going through something similar. Until next time, remember that quiet justice always speaks louder than betrayal ever could.